Another reason for building this set of habits first is that they take the longest to become true habits in your players. Therefore, they need the most drill and repetition time. My suggestion is to never stop drilling this penetrating pitch circle movement scenario. Circle movement training begins by establishing 5 spots on the NBA arc. It's important to be well behind the 19-foot arc. You'll see why when we get to the passing rules later in the video. In the first stages of teaching the offense, I like to mark the floor with distinct spots and keep the players very strict with their spacing. When the ball penetrates, the players without the ball will move from one spot to the next on this giant semicircle. The question is, how do the players know which way to rotate? Let's begin with the ball penetrating north-south, that is, as straight to the goal as possible. But even on a straight north-south penetration, the ball handler must go around his defender either right or left. Now, here comes the 2-player read and reaction habit that must be drilled in this layer. Each player without the ball must read which way the ball handler is driving, right or left. It helps to picture the ball handler turning a little circle around his defender. The little circle turns the big circle, and that tells the players without the ball which way they should move. If the ball handler goes right, then everyone moves to the next spot on their right. If the ball drives left, then everyone rotates left to the next spot. Let's watch what happens when the ball is driven toward the goal from each position on the floor. As you watch, notice this principle. When the ball drives north-south, the players without the ball move east-west.
Three-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Natural pitch. Safety valve. Choose pitch or safety valve. Up top, choose pitch or dish. Opposite wing chooses pitch or dish. Layer 2, the baseline drive adjustment.
In the previous section, we looked at the basics of the circle movement, but I didn't show what would happen when the corners drive baseline. That's because the baseline drive creates a special situation. First, I'll show you the adjustments and why they're needed. Then we'll look at the simplicity and consistency that these adjustments create. In the 5-out set, if a corner drives baseline, the opposite corner should not circle up to the wing like the previous section would indicate. And this is the 2-player read and reaction habit that must be drilled in this layer. The opposite corner must stay, or if he begins to move up to the wing, he must come back and fill the spot. The reason is that the opposite corner is the natural pitch window for the baseline penetrator. It's open most of the time, a straight ahead pitch for the penetrator, and is therefore a high priority window that must be filled. This high priority of the opposite corner applies to all sets. So even if the opposite corner is empty, it must be filled with any player on the opposite side of the floor. The remaining players without the ball need very little drilling for the baseline adjustment. They are still reacting by the circle movement habit from the previous layer. All that's needed are a couple of tiny adjustments. The opposite wing circle moves but stops a little short into what we'll call the 45-degree window. That's not much of an adjustment. The head of the key circle moves but stops a little short as well in what we'll call the 90-degree window. That's not much of an adjustment either. The same side wing circle moves into the safety valve position. No adjustment at all. In fact, the opposite corner becomes the only real adjustment that we make on a baseline drive. He'll be tempted to circle up to the wing like everyone else, but he must refill his corner for the natural pitch. When they all move at once, it looks like this. Notice the floor becomes balanced. Now for the good news. These windows that I just described, these spots where the penetrator looks for teammates, will never change for a baseline drive regardless of your formation. If you have 4 players out and 1 inside, and a wing drives baseline, these same spots will be filled. If you're playing 3 out, 2 in, and anyone drives baseline, these same windows will be filled every time.
3-player drills to build 2-player reaction habits. Corner to corner. "90-degree up the line. "45-degree pitch. Layer 3, pass and cut.
After dribble penetration, the second most common thing that players do is pass the ball to the right or left. This occurs so often that it must be turned into a scoring threat. Here are 3 reasons why. Most defenders think that if you pass the ball, then they've been successful at shutting down your ability to attack and score. They think that they've won the one-on-one battle, and as a result, they'll relax as soon as you pass. Sometimes they relax mentally, sometimes physically, sometimes both.